UConn women are in action tonight against the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, again, I want to thank all of you for the continued support. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so now. Really appreciate all of the support you give us on YouTube. We're creeping up on 11,000 subscribers. We are also really enjoying some good audio downloads, but we could always have more. Even if you haven't downloaded the audio podcast, do so now. It helps the podcast grow. I'll be honest with you, it makes us some money so that we can cover the games in person. Like I was able to go to Raleigh and other places like Tampa and women's and men's Final Fours as the years go on. So really appreciate all of the support there. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering UConn men's and women's basketball, the hoops capital of the world. We're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. This episode is now redirecting all of the playing towards the women. The UConn women play tonight against the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, a 10 seed that is playing anything but like a 10 seed. Also, have to mention this before I get in trouble for it. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Please do so. All right, so let's talk about this. Where this journey really began. The first round of the NCAA Tournament, and in true UConn fashion, they destroyed Arkansas State. It was crazy because my wife was working, and she works at a brewery in downtown here in Greensboro, where we live. And she was like, I turned on one of the TVs, and I was like, "Is that the right score?" I think it was like 80-22 at that point, or something crazy, because it was 66-16 at halftime. I mean, these are 10-minute quarters. These aren't 12-minute quarters like in the WNBA or NBA, and you play 48 minutes. These are 40-minute games where UConn probably could have scored 120 to 130 points, kind of called out the dogs there a little bit with Geno in the first game. But as we've had guests on who are experts in the field in covering women's college basketball for years, parity is coming, but let me get a sip of water. My throat's bothering me. Parity is coming with women's basketball, but it typically comes in the forms of Sweet 16, Elite Eights, Final Fours, etc. You're going to there's some second round games that are pretty good, the 4s versus 5s, etc. But it's rare to see a 10 seed now, or really like a 15 seed beat a 2 seed like you see on the men's side. And even that is a little less prevalent as we're seeing more NIL money go to bigger schools and all the best players going from mid-majors to high majors. Think about, Caitlin Chen coming from Princeton, a smaller school, an Ivy league to now the big time with UConn. So you take their best player, you diminish them, and you make your team stronger. It's just kind of the way college athletics is working, or not working in some people's estimation. But anyway, it was 103-34. Like I said, my wife had to squint at the TV. It wasn't a typo. It wasn't something I did. The thing I liked about it, it kind of reminded me of, I'll give you an analogy. It's a terrible one, but it's one that's been used in many movies over the years. It's how do you survive? How do you survive in prison? How do you let people know how tough you are? You don't find the biggest person in the world. You don't find the toughest person in the world. You find someone that you can handle, and you beat the crap out of them. And then everyone goes, "Oh, he's a little crazy, but I probably shouldn't go near him." The UConn women just absolutely dismantled this Arkansas State team, and it was bad. And that's a team that's like not in the grand scheme of college basketball on the women's side. It wasn't a terrible 15 seed. they just played incredible. 41 fast break points. Azzi Fudd put up 27. Sarah Strong looked like she's continuing what she does. And I'm sorry for yawning, guys. Really early morning with my kids. Got some personal stuff going on with them. So just trying to get through some of the basketball stuff and not think about it. But so again, if I yawn a few times, make fun of me or not, but either way, there's a reason behind it. Either way, Sarah Strong was incredible. She had her stats are like, or they're not even worth putting out there because she is so over producing what a freshman should play like. It's at the point now where it's like expected, unfair or not fair. She's dominating, and it really kind of gives a little bit of credence to what I was talking about this team really shouldn't be a 2 seed. They are, so it is what it is, but they might be the strongest 2 seed that you could possibly ever have. That's why I was joking around saying the 5-1 seeds, because even if you don't want to take away Texas or South Carolina or UCLA or USC from the one side, the one line, UConn's a 1 seed in my estimation, right? There just might be that crooked little 2 next to them. But this game wasn't just about AZ and Paige and Sarah. It was, there were some quieter stories. And one of the players I think that's waited for their moment and has probably the most incredible story of all is Jana El Alfy. Jana grew up in Egypt where she was watching NCAA tournament games and it wasn't exactly easy. She didn't grow up with March Madness on her screen. She dreamed of it. She couldn't see it. Now, after redshirting her first year and spending her second year recovering from a torn Achilles, she's finally getting that chance to play in the coveted NCAA tournament. She told reporters recently, I quote, "I've been looking forward to this moment for so long. Finally being able to make it after 2 years of watching is such a blessing." And you could feel the emotion in her voice, the longing, the gratitude, the pride. You could see it even coming through the screen. Her stats don't jump off the page. 5 points, 6 rebounds. But that's not the point. The point is she's here. She's finally a part of the madness, and she's not taking it for granted. And sometimes that's a really dangerous proposition for for opponents, where you kind of have this freeing, like, I'm finally here. And I feel like that's kind of what Jana really has kind of put forth in her brain. She recalled back that the South Carolina game earlier this year, arguably her best outing in a UConn jersey, and probably a turning point in her season. She played with fire. She blocked everybody out. Remember the feeling of not being able to compete last season that drove her. She's quoted as saying, "I just wanted to win really, really bad. I didn't want to take it for granted." And that kind of mindset, it travels. And hopefully it travels all the way to Tampa, because that shows up in March. It's the kind of hunger this team needs as the pressure starts to ramp up. Round of 32, fascinating matchup here, UConn versus South Dakota State. On paper, 2 versus 10. But anyone who follows or who followed this tournament knows seeds don't meet as much past the first round. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that South Dakota State is going to beat UConn, because I really don't think that's the case. But it would not surprise me if they made it a closer game, because when they knocked off Oklahoma State, they had a massive second half surge. So maybe some of that is momentum, albeit against a lesser opponent. They're well coached. They have scorers. They're playing loose. What the hell do they have to lose? They're playing in stores. They got 4 players from Minnesota, including standout forward Brooklyn Meyer, who grew up watching UConn. She even mentioned Brianna Stewart was her favorite player. I mean, there's a heavy UConn influence. If the players can get past all of the banners in the rafters, the memories, the moments that they probably watched on TV as kids, just like that scene from Hoosiers, 15 feet, 10 feet, all the same, just a different arena. South Dakota State head coach Aaron Johnson said he doesn't even have to tell his team about UConn's history. They already know it. They know what this game means. They know what the kind of the atmosphere in the arena is going to be like and what they're walking into. But here's the key. Will they play up to the moment, or will they get swallowed up by it? Will they be bothered by it? Because the Huskies, for all their talent and history, don't play nostalgic basketball. They press, they play full court basketball. They get quick buckets. They get, like they said, 41 fast break points in the first half. They turn one bad pass into 3 quick buckets, and all of a sudden you're down 9. It's not just their offensive firepower. It reminds me of the way people talk about compound interest. If interest at a bank, over time, 30 years, it looks great. But if you have compound interest and you start putting more and more money in, all of a sudden you go, wow, that tripled, that money doubled, that money quadrupled. Like that's what UConn does with it's like exponential growth. A steal turns into a bucket, another steal turns into a 3-pointer, a defensive stop turns into a fast break. So it's the talent plus the effort plus the defense, and that offensive firepower is really firing on all cylinders with Azzi Fudd and Sarah Strong having dominant games, as well as Ashlyn Shade. And one more layer to the opening weekend, Geno Auriemma turned 71. Happy birthday, Geno. Unlike last year where the team celebrated his 70th with cupcakes, t-shirts, and even a Carl from Up joke, courtesy of Nika Mule, this year was quieter, more low-key. Pardon me. No public fanfare, just a nod from Paige that Geno took as a birthday gift. But he wanted one more present. A UConn men's win over Florida. That didn't happen, unfortunately. But on the women's side, his team gave him the ultimate gift, a performance that looked like a championship blueprint. I know Geno probably is hurting for his buddy Dan Hurley. I know they've been doing a lot more media and content together, and they've gotten closer over the years. I'm sure they had a conversation about the game on Saturday or Sunday, pardon me. But it's back to business for Geno, and I'm sure he can console Dan and others on the men's side at a later date. But Geno's Geno. He also took a moment to reflect, and I agree with him on the Arkansas State's travel situation. The Red Wolves had to stay in Norwich, which is nearly an hour away. And Geno didn't love that. He said a team gets into the NCAA tournament for the first time. It shouldn't be like a regular season game. It should be special. That's a coach who respects the game, even when he's dominating it. And I don't know what the situation is. I mean, there literally is a hotel on campus. If you don't know this, I know some people haven't been to campus in a long time, so maybe you haven't seen the Storrs campus, but the Graduate is right there. It's a Hilton. Like I've stayed there. It's not terribly expensive. It's not terribly. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. The hospitality is wonderful. People at the Graduate, thank you so much for all you do for me when I'm there. But I mean, for them to not, God, at least stay in Hartford. Like you couldn't get a hotel in Hartford. Stay at the Goodwin. Stay at the Marriott. Like, good Lord, that's ridiculous. And it pisses you off because then you have all these idiots out there who are going to be like, why are you comparing women's basketball to men's basketball? Because it rarely happens on the men's side. Like, I know the UConn men have had situations where they've been robbed in hotels. Like, it happens, but it's so rare. Like, how about a couple years ago, we've had T. Baker on, who's a contributor to the show on Fridays, about how, when they show the disparity between what the men's locker room is and what the women's locker room is for workout equipment. It's silly. It's the dumbest thing in the world. If the women are going to be compared, or they're going to be the tournament's going to be equal to the men, you have to give them the same resources. The ratings are there. Like, spare me the WNBA stuff. Like, the WNBA may not get the best ratings and therefore their salaries aren't there. So it's supply and demand, but the college basketball ratings are higher than ever. So the revenue's there. Put them up in a freaking hotel that's near or on campus. It's the dumbest thing in the world. If you're going to have games on a campus on the women's side, you're not going to have neutral sites like you do on the men. It has to be an experience for the teams that are there. That's a joke. It should never happen again. Really proud of Geno using his voice for that. But as you know, I'm going to get off my high horse. We have game tonight, 8 p.m., ESPN. Let's take a quick, because we have FanDuel as a sponsor. Let's see what I'm going to use my phone. Let's see what the FanDuel line is for the women's game tonight, because the women covered a 44.5-point spread against Arkansas State. So if you can put a couple of shekels on the UConn women, let's see. I bet you it's 22. That's my guess. I wonder what it is. Let's see. We're getting close. 29.5. Woo! I mean, they just covered 44.5. Might not be a bad play. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the weight of legacy and the road ahead after this. Daylight savings snuck up on us again, huh? And if you're feeling that lost sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up your busy schedule, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I've been staying up late watching all these tournament actions, getting ready for these games, and it keeps me active. My 5 Hour Energy keeps me awake and ready to go, especially even for the next day. And it's whether I'm at a game or traveling, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack and have it delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today. Stay energized. And we're back on Locked On UConn. As we talked about, we're going to talk about the weight of the legacy of UConn women. There's a certain gravity to March in stores. There was a thought that both the men and women could win titles again this year. The men obviously bowed out against Florida, but the lights hit different at Gamble when the women are playing in their first and second round games. The banners whisper reminders of greatness. It kind of reminds me of when you walk into the Boston Garden, the new garden, and you see those 17, 18 banners or whatever it is. And, you joke around about that, like the ghosts are there, like the leprechauns. There's a lot of magic in Gamble, and especially for the women who won 11 titles. And for teams like South Dakota State who have never played UConn before, the history is everywhere. You could hear it in San Diego State coach's Aaron Johnson's voice as he mentioned it. You don't need to convince my players that this is a big moment. They understand the history speaks for itself. That's the power of UConn. It doesn't just live in the past. It lives in the air. It affects how opponents prepare, how they think, how they even think about potentially beating UConn. Is it too daunting of a task? Probably. We just talked about it being almost a 30-point spread. From Rebecca Lobo to Sue Burr to Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, Brianna Stewart, and now Paige Beckers, UConn has been the standard, not just in women's college basketball, but in how programs are built, how players carry themselves, how coaches demand excellence. And what's fascinating is how that legacy continues to evolve. Geno has built something of a dynasty, built a dynasty that still makes opponents pause. Even without having won a title in almost a decade, he's not just coaching a team, he's managing expectations, managing history, managing pressure, and the weight of being the measuring stick for the sport. Like, it's not a measuring stick for the Big East, like some teams, or the measuring stick of the SEC. It's literally the measuring stick of the entire sport. 31 straight Sweet 16s, 11 national titles, 15 of the last 16 Final Fours, 30-plus years of relevance, 40 years of being in one place. The dominance and the cultural impact that he has created at this place is unmatched. And you throw in the wonderful and also Hall of Fame coach, Chris Daly. The 17-0 Chris Daly, as I like to remind you. Even Brooklyn Meyer, San Diego State's top forward, said she grew up watching Brianna Stewart, and as we mentioned before, and UConn in those Final Fours. Here's the challenge. UConn doesn't play sentimental basketball. They don't sit back and let you, try to get your feet wet, get yourself, I'll just give you a good example of what I thought, totally different teams, totally different, essentially two different sports, even though it's men's and women's. Like, I know Florida just beat UConn, but there was a sense that UConn could win that game because of how Florida almost allowed UConn to get comfortable and allowed them to confuse Florida with their intricate offense, to play a little bit more pressure defense than they probably thought they were going to get. Even though they knew that UConn was a back-to-back title champion and wasn't going to go quietly, they kind of had this aura of eventually our talent will take us over the top. And they were right. But I would caution against that most times, because when you haven't won it, when you haven't won a championship, sometimes that's not enough. And it was very close to being that way. One thing breaks the wrong way for the Gators, and the UConn men are in another Sweet 16, and we're having a much different conversation. So with the women on the championship pedigree is kind of always there. They very rarely in situations in March. They may do it in the early parts of the year with smaller games against the Springfield colleges of the world. That's probably not a real school, but like against a smaller school, to kind of almost ease them into it. But when it comes to the NCAA tournament, you're going into the fire pit right away. And so that'll be the challenge. I think South Dakota State is not going to be able to rise to that occasion. I think you should take those 29.5 points if you're betting on this game tonight, because UConn isn't going to handhold them and say, hey, I hope you had a great experience coming here from South Dakota. I wonder where they're staying. It sucks that Arkansas State had to stay in Norwich, but that's a great question. I don't know the answer to. I wonder where South Dakota State is staying. Maybe because they won, they got to upgrade. Maybe they're at the Graduate. Maybe they're at a hotel in Hartford. Who knows? All I know is tonight at 8 o'clock, UConn is going to steamroll the Jackrabbits. Wouldn't be surprised to see another 30 or 40-point win. We're going to come back and talk about the road ahead. Juju Smith got injured. How serious is it? And wrap up the show. Get you ready for game time tonight. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks is a curation that makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. I make it my solemn goal that if I hear someone wants to go to an event, I always give them the Game Time code that we have for you. We're going to talk about it right now because there is not a better app for it. You get a lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% if you find a better price. You have peace of mind. You get seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and lowest price guarantees. You can book with total confidence. And if you're a new customer, you download the Game Time app and create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, last segment of the program, getting you ready for the game tonight. We should focus to what's next. We're going to get through this South Dakota State game and try to go all the way, right? Get to the Sweet 16 in Spokane, or is it Spokane? Kelvin Sampson would probably, get after me for my mispronunciation. God, he'd hate my show. I mispronounce names all the time. Paige Beckers is healthy, fully confident, and full control. Azzi Fudd is playing her best basketball. Good Lord, is she shooting the ball well. Sarah Strong is literally giving this team a dimension they haven't had in years, and the interior presence as well as a defensive presence that is unmatched. Phenomenal length, her ability to kind of like, they joked around with her this year saying with go gadget arms. She really is attacking the basket. She can shoot it. There's just something is happening. You got Aubrey back in the mold after she missed the Big East tournament. She's given them some good defensive work here. It's coming together at the perfect time, and it won't be easy. The bracket is loaded. The South Carolina is still lurking for the finals. USC is dangerous, but UConn has the formula, elite guard play, freshman, probably maybe the best player in the country. Incredible top-tier defense, and get this guy named Geno Auriemma who knows a thing or two about getting to the Final Four. So get through South Dakota State. UConn is in the Sweet 16 again, likely playing either an Iowa or an Oklahoma team. Both those teams are going to be a little tougher, but maybe pose a tiny bit of a threat, but nothing to be worried about. Then is the Elite Eight matchup against USC. Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Watkins. Juju Smith-Schuster is a wide receiver for Kansas City, if you didn't know. But Juju Watkins had a little bit of an injury against UNC Greensboro. Let me see if I felt like it was nothing, but, she was over, let's see what her injury looks like. Pardon me. Seems like it's a day-to-day thing. Rolled ankle, and she rolled her ankle against UNCG. They won 71-25. She still led the team with 22 points and 8 rebounds. So let's see. End of the season, body's a little banged up. On to the next, and she's okay. Yeah, she said, "I'll be all right. Don't worry." So yeah, she's doing fine. Yeah, everything's going to be good. So listen, that matchup's going to be crazy. It's going to, and here's how it's also going to affect me personally, I have everything set up for the Final Four and going to cover the games. If UConn is there, my media credential automatically goes into from buffering or pending to approved, and then I will book a flight on the 31st, and away we go. If they lose, unfortunately, my travel season will be over. I'm sure my wife wouldn't care about that, but it would be nice to see them play in the Final Four and aim for a 12th national title. I will have more in-depth coverage than I gave you today once we get through the South Dakota State game, and we get more into the Sweet 16. We'll have some potentially bigger guests on this week. I'm working on a few legends to come on and talk through some stuff. But until then, I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked on, stay connected. And remember, it's not about getting it done. It's about doing it in a way that it cannot be done any better. Thank you, Geno Auriemma. Happy birthday. And as always, go Huskies.